We are a football loving society. Like, just any chance we get, there's a reason that now the UFL exists with the XFL and USFL merger, and games are going to happen, and a million people are still going to watch. We love football, and it's a great thing because I love football just as much as you love football. And there are positives and negatives when it comes to college football, and one of the big negatives that has been viewed is the transfer portal. And while I am in agreement that there are a lot of bads with the transfer portal, especially with the schedule, especially when it opens, when it closes, etc., there is some good of the transfer portal. We talk about the NFL in sports talk all of the time. Like, it's, and to the NFL's credit, they have done a great job of staying in the news 12 months out of the year, where, you know, free agency and the draft and even the schedule release, like, and that one freaks me out because you know right now what your favorite NFL teams, who the 17 teams they're going to, or 17 games they're going to play this year, like, even to the point of where they're going to be. You just don't know when they're going to be. And the NFL during COVID turned the schedule release into a way to stay in the news for another month, where we're going to talk about which games are great, who got the shaft, who's got ridiculous travel, how it's not fair that this team got an early bye and that team got a late, but whatever the case may be. The NFL has done a great job, a fantastic job of staying at the forefront of the sports news cycle for 12 months out of the year, with the playoffs, the draft, the combine, free agency, schedule release, OTAs, training camp, Hall of Fame, etc. They do a great job of that. Like, they should be commended, because they take over and own every holiday from damn near Labor Day through Valentine's Day and President's Day at this point, and they have reaped the benefits of that financially. College football has not done a great job of staying in the headlines for 12 months out of the year, because basically from the end of spring practice, or even if you go from the national championship game to St. Patrick's Day, which is a solid 2-month stretch, if there's anything in the news for college football, it's generally bad. It's something a player did, something a coach did, that can be viewed negatively. Now, for the most part, from the end of the national championship game to St. Patrick's Day, or tax day at this point, the college football talking points have been college football playoff expanding, getting a new deal, and Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan. Like, that's been pretty much the February National Signing Day now is nothing. And I talked about this a little bit during that February signing day, where you need to have that signing day in February so you remain at the top of the sports consciousness, because people can forget, people can misremember or lose track of what's going on in college football during a really long dead period. And the transfer portal, especially when it opens on April 16th, and it's going to be a free-for-all frenzy, is going to be a good thing for college football overall, for the average casual fan, for the notoriety and the attention that is going to bring college football. Now, is it maybe a negative to the folks working inside the industry of college football? Yes, it's going to be a bad thing that players are going to have an absolute frenzy in the transfer portal at a somewhat bad time. Yes, that is going to suck. But for the average college football fan, there are going to be things to talk about, obsess about, etc. And I'm not even, we can talk about and obsess about all sorts of things right now. If we wanted to sit down and say, like, hey, how does Jalen Milroe fit into Kalen DeBoer's offense at Alabama in his first year? We could have that conversation. But at the same time, I'm cognizant that it's April 10th and we got a long way to go until kickoff. So we've got plenty of time to have that conversation. But in the macro level of things that are affecting college sports and college football, in the quote unquote off season, and especially in that time frame from the national championship game to like St. Patrick's Day, the only things that there are to talk about that are happening now and are relevant are generally bad things. And then you get spring practice for a month or whatever. You can talk about spring practice for damn near everybody in the country. And then from the end of spring practice until the start of fall camp, you're sort of back in that, if anything comes out college football wise that isn't, a stadium renovation or a coach contract extension, whatever the case may be, it's still kind of negative. So college football, I think, and this is one of those things that happens with when you don't have a czar of college football pulling everybody in the same direction to say, hey, we've really got to scrap the early signing day because, one, it's a really crappy time in the schedule for college football coaches, for college football players, for the transfer portal, et cetera. Like there's a natural, and again, the NFL does a great job of this of, okay, we're going to open up free agency, or we're going to open up the league year. Now you're able to do some trades. So we've got a spot to make some roster changes. We're going to have the NFL draft. You're going to have a spot to make some roster changes. You're going to have a chance to improve your roster, get a little, like take a break for a second, get a lay of the land. When you get signing day along with the transfer portal at the same time, along with coaches shuffling, changing jobs, it's just a bad spot to be in. It's a bad situation. It's a bad time frame. And if you had somebody pulling the string saying, hey, for us to stay in the spotlight and it doesn't have to be 12 months out of the year, right? Like you don't have to stay on top of the sports mountaintop 100% of the time. It's not really feasible. Like the NFL does go away there from like mid-June, early July. So everybody in the league can take a vacation, whether that's the coaches, the people who work in the league office, the players, the media, the general managers, the front offices, the player personnel directors, the assistant coaches, the trainers, whoever the hell. They can all go like, okay, before this stuff starts back up again, we're taking a break. And so it doesn't have to be necessarily 100% 12 months out of the year. But if you could get some wins in times that have really, really big downtimes where you go kind of weeks or months with outside of flat out bad news happening. There are big windows there where you're just asking for negativity to dominate the headlines of your sport. And so the transfer portal opening up on April 16th and essentially opening up and the door being propped open and you can leave whenever you want. And there are as many transfers as you can have. It's an all you can transfer buffet after April 16th. While for the coaches and for the universities and maybe the like super diehard of one fan base can view that as a negative. And I think that's fair. I think if your program gets decimated by the transfer portal in April, that sucks. It really, truly does. Because you got an idea right now on April 10th of what your team, what your season, what the outlook of your year looks like. And it can be drastically changed in the next week. And while that stinks, for the sport as a whole, it's a good thing because having attention on you, having notoriety, having people pay attention to you when they're not used to paying attention to you at this time. They're not used to being college football fanatics, the average fan. I'm not talking about you and me who are watching and consuming and talking about college football on April 10th. I'm talking about the dude who tunes into the biggest games and is trying to look for a reason for why he doesn't have to go mow his yard on Saturday at 3:30 Eastern. Oh, honey, I can't. Alabama, Tennessee's on. Like, that's who we're talking about because that makes up the overwhelming majority of casual college football fans. And you want as many casual college football fans as possible. So the transfer portal opening in the next couple of weeks and staying open and having quote unquote free agency, which nobody inside the sport likes, that it's free agency, except for the people that really like it because they still get to benefit from it. It's a whole poppycock virtue signaling thing in college football. But it does open the door to being accessible and being at the top of the headlines and paying attention to a sport that you're not used to paying attention to in April, in May. Outside of the NFL draft, talking about, man, Jaden Daniels sure did play well at LSU, didn't he? Yeah, he did. That's what we're relegated to. We can talk on the field, things that are affecting your team, your program, your position coach, your fandom that actually matter in April. And I think that's a good thing, all things considered. Now, it's a mixed bag, 100%, but I think the positive outweighs the negative. And maybe I'm wrong on that, and it's just going to be a Wild West next week. And I'll sit here and tell you, like, oh, got that one wrong because that did not go according to plan. And maybe it will be a net negative. But right now, my view on it is I think it's a positive overall. And I think you should think that too. That's just my take on it. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we are pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening to the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll be back at it tomorrow. I'll see you then here on the Daily Huddle, Saturday Glory.